in the past, before all of this AI, when people asked what to do to be a good developer, I said, like, just have a really high tolerance for frustration.
That's about right. For me to understand Next or React or some weird CLI, there's nothing fundamental. No. So it really is just wasted knowledge.
What defined a developer at its core used to be being able to write code and understand programming languages. And suddenly that part of being a developer is getting way less important. Software development will just be a skill. Just like with writing, there's still professional writers, but like all of us also have to know how to write as part of our job. 2 years ago, our addressable audience was essentially 17 million professional JavaScript developers. And suddenly, computers can write code. An addressable audience for a tool like ours, that's everybody that can use spreadsheets today, which is more like 3 billion people. A year ago, we were sitting at around 3,000 signups a day. Today, we're sitting at around 16,000 a day. We're starting to see those kind of patterns where is this an agent accessing or is it a human? There's also just way more people having fun building crazy stuff. People building like really cool WebGL games and so on that they could like just never managed to build before. And browsers will evolve really dramatically from this. That originally concept of a user agent on the web is getting real. You see people like have history with their ChatGPT or Claude, and they really have a preference. And they don't want to go to like the bank's AI and talk to that. They just want to interact in that way.
Matt, thanks for joining. It's good to see you. So this is Matt Biilmann, the CEO, founder of Netlify, also creator of the Jamstack. Very well known to be an architect of the web and someone that tracks the trends. And you were with us a couple months ago, and we were discussing AX and what that means. And now, like the space is moving so quickly. We're a few months on. And so the point of this is going to be to talk about what we've learned in the last couple of months. But maybe before that, maybe you can describe what AX is.
Yeah.
And then we'll just kind of get into like kind of what we're learning.
Yeah, I wrote an article about the first article about AX back in January, which is like feels like 10 years ago in AI time now, right? Like as the term for agent experience, and sort of really thinking about the evolution from user experience as like the term that like really could set a product apart from other products. Not just based on a checklist of features, but based on like the experience of like everything around it. And then our first decade at Netlify of really centering around developer experience, that's typically been a way to set platforms aside from other platforms, right? Like by making like lower friction for developers to actually build on them and extend them and use them and so on. Towards this idea that we suddenly, all of us that build product have this new persona using the product that's an agent driven by AI. And that also sort of actually have an experience of the product, right? Like whatever that means, right? Like doesn't necessarily mean that there's like some soul behind it or something, right? Like, but it obviously has some, like it's like actually attempting to figure out how to do stuff with our product in an autonomous way, right? Like so suddenly the documentation about our product, the onboarding experience of our product is no longer just for like a person. It's also for a person asking an agent to do stuff, right? Like, and that was what I sort of described in this article on agent experience as something that suddenly for us at Netlify became like our product North Star, and that I've proposed at the time should be pretty important for anybody building products in the world today.
So listen, you run Netlify, as we mentioned, which is one of the world's largest hosting sites. So have you seen more agents than humans showing up at these websites? Or I feel like there's a lot of stuff going down. There's that, but there's also like people are creating websites using agents. And so I just feel like there's, just a lot to tease out here.
I think especially in the dev tool space, like I'll say that like the term AX have had like outsized adoption in the developer tool space. And I think that's because for developer tools, there's this like wild thing happening where if you take Netlify, right? Like 2 years ago, our audience, like our addressable audience was essentially 17 million professional JavaScript developers, right? Like, and then there's like some adjacent developers that might use it as well, right? Like, but it's like a deeply technical product, like based on writing code and shipping it, right? Like, so the like main audience is 17 million people. And suddenly computers can write code. And that whole question of like, do you actually need to write code to build software starts becoming like, not really, right? Like, and you start having an addressable audience for a tool like ours that's more like everybody that can use spreadsheets today, which is more like 3 billion people, right? Like, and the distance between 17 million and 3 billion is really, really big, right? Like, but if you want to reach that large audience, you have to reach them through the agents they're using to write the code and to build the software, right? So I think that has meant that in the developer tool space, this idea of agent experience is like extra important right now. And there's like extra attention of it. That doesn't mean that it's limited to like developer tools. And I think we'll see it more and more in all products, right? Like as agents try to interact with anything, but it does mean that specifically in our space, it's like become something that's like almost essential to actually like reaching your potential as a company.
So from the perspective of Netlify, it seems like there's two things going on. One of them is, to what extent are agents making websites? Right, using like the bolts or the lovables or the replets or like the whatever it is to like generate like the website, you know. And then there's a second one is for a website that's already generated. To what extent is an agent visiting it, right? And so how do you think about, you know?
There's those two parts to it constantly, right? Like, and
is it, by the way, is AX both of those, or is it?
It's AX. Like we at Netlify, we talk about it. Like at Netlify, we actually talk about 3 kinds of AX relevant to us, right? Like it's all AX, right? Like, but there's like Netlify's AX, right? Like what is the agent experience of using Netlify?
Netlify, sure.
Right. That's like Netlify's
so like you're like the you're like the website or whatever.
Totally, right? Like it's like our CLI can Cloud Code figure out how to use our CLI. That's like part of Netlify's AX, right? Like then there's our customers' AX, the stuff that our customers build. How can we help them make that, like make a really great agent experience with that,
assuming
right?
they're using agents.
But independently on that, right? Like if they're building like an e-commerce site, what do we need to help them with to make it easy? Like now Stripe has a new like payments option to buy directly through ChatGPT.
I see.
What does that mean for people building e-commerce sites on Netlify, right? Like what do they actually need to do different to make sure that ChatGPT can also buy their products on behalf of users, right? Like there's that whole line of talk, like stuff like, should we help people charge for crawling like Cloudflare does? And do people even want that? And so on, right? Like that's all in our mind, like the customer AX, where like, how do we help our customers do these things? And then the third side of it is kind of what we call industry AX. That's like all the protocols and like general standards we have to agree on, and as an industry to make all of these things simpler, right? And that's kind of how we think about it internally. So we touch all 3 of those. And I would say we've done the most work on Netlify's own AX right now. And that again kind of comes back to just like how massive that change in like the developer world is right now. But we are obviously also doing a lot of work on helping customers build MCP servers and figure out how to make their sites accessible for agents, or like deciding if a visitor is an agent or a human and so on.
Do you have any numbers that like you can highlight on like whatever 3 years ago, you know, people were not using AI to build sites and now they are? Like, do you have can you give any sense of like, I mean, the extent that
where we see it is just that shift in like the mass of people that are suddenly coming in the front door. Like, it's like, that's just the first obvious one, where like a year ago, we were sitting at around 3,000 signups a day, which for a developer tool is like,
that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
today we're sitting at around 16,000 a day.
Wow.
Right? Like,
and do you have a sense of where they're coming from?
That's the wildest thing is that it's everywhere, right? Like, because like at first we started having a whole bunch of these agents sort of directly integrating with her Bolt.new being the largest one, right? Like then a whole world of like Same.new, Builder.io, Memex, Rocket, CodeMate, Windsurf, like just like all of these different ones. But all of them together is kind of like a 4% of the signups. So the rest just happens organically, right? Like, and we actually, Bolt.new had like used our claim flow, which is like become one really common technique for agent experience. This idea that you can like let an agent use your product before the human knows the product exists. And then when the human wants to get involved, they go and claim whatever the agent did and sort of open an account. And at first, like Bolt.new, which is one of these like very consumer-oriented code agents, right? Like was using that flow and sending anybody that wanted to really do something with their website over to us. And then a few months ago, we changed to a white label agreement with them where they are now like fully vertically integrating Netlify, and they're like white labeling us and selling it directly to their customers to give like a really integrated vertical experience. And ironically, you cannot see that change in our sign up numbers at all, even if that was like our largest partner, right? Like, because like the general growth of the space of people building web like that.
So are they using AI tools? Are they using like a Cursor or ChatGPT, or is it just like people are like decided to make websites all of a sudden?
I mean, I don't know for sure, right? Like, because I can't always see what they build it with, right? Like, but I think it would be a weird coincidence that like just a lot more people were like, I really like HTML now, right? Like, and I think it's more likely that you'll just see that the amount of people building web apps and websites are exploding because like the barrier to entry for doing it is like massively disappearing. Like you have people today that accidentally create a web app in React, right? Like you go into like ChatGPT and you're like prompted the right thing, up, and suddenly it like spins up a canvas and it builds you all this stuff, and you download it and it's like, okay, now where do I put it, right? And we're pretty much like the simplest place to put it, right? Like, and then we have made our tooling really great for all of these sources, right? Like, and we're seeing that, and we can see in the personas that come in that suddenly they go from being like developers. It's obviously still a ton of developers, but there's also a lot of personas that like in our onboarding, like characterize themselves as like marketeers or designers or product managers or all these other
I would
roles.
expect if AI is driving this, exactly that would happen, which is you go like, Netlify has always been a very technical tool for developers. Like if you're like a JavaScript developer, you use like a hosting by yourself. And so I would guess like probably the clearest indication that AI is doing it is exactly this. Like the mix of like technical versus non-technical shifts, for example.
Totally, and it really shifts.
Do you have, I mean, are there any rough numbers to that, or is it just?
I don't like.
Is it still vibes?
It's still vibes. It's still vibes, right? Like, but it's. I can say the vibes are very strong. Like even just talking to our customers, right? Like we can see this shift. We have other things that we can see. Things like for like our core audience, we have this functionality called "Why did it fail?" Where when a build, like when you open a pull request, we run a build and we push that to your site. When that fails, that's always sort of a point of like, okay, now I have to go and debug it and figure out like what happened, right? Like, so we put a button in the UI that literally says, why did it fail? You click that button and we send like the logs and the code like to an LLM, and we give you a diagnosis.
That's awesome.
Then first we put a button on saying, copy this result to an LLM, right? Like, because like if you want, you're in that loop and you want the LLM, okay, it failed, go fix it, right? Like, and immediately when we put that button in, we saw that like 25% of everyone that clicked, why did it fail, clicked copy to LLM.
Wow.
So that's like also a pretty big sign of like how much this is like shifting, right? Like, and now we just launched this thing called agent runners where you can like spin up like autonomous runs with Claude Code or Codex and so on, right? Like, so now how we have a like just fix it button.
You know, it's remarkable to me. I will say, here's a personal anecdote, which is I develop with Cursor in the evenings for hobby projects. I've been using Netlify for years.
Yeah.
Right. But I never remember all the commands, like whatever.
No.
What's super remarkable to me is like the LLMs actually know it. So I'll be in Cursor and I'll like, want to be like, oh, like what are the Netlify commands to like, whatever, deploy this, add this, whatever. And it actually knows it. And so I would say even for the case of professional developers, they're using LLMs to debug. Because I mean, it's just like, there's just so many frameworks and so many tools to know. So,
and you should, right? Like, I mean, that's one of my big thesis that like the whole definition of a developer is really going to change, right? Like what defined a developer at its core used to be being able to write code and understand programming languages and understand the syntax and like that layer sort of below the visible substrate of things, right? Like, and suddenly that part of being a developer is getting way less important and potentially going to what's zero importance, right? Like, and then the other skill set of being a developer of like clarity of thought, of understanding what users actually need you to build, of systems thinking and system design and so on. Those elements are suddenly becoming like the main qualifier for like, are you actually a really strong developer? And that also changes the persona, right? Like there's a lot of personas that were like really, really great at like the puzzle level layer of like low level code and so on, but that might not be that strong in like the more humanistic layer of like taste and what to build and so on, right? Like, and there's a lot of people that were sort of like cut off fundamentally from development that are very strong in those layers and that start entering the field.
Interesting. I'm going to give a counterpoint to that. I don't know if this right or it's not, but like try this on for size. I started programming in the 90s.
Yeah.
And to program, you sat down at a computer and you knew a programming language and you wrote the programming language and you had a program.
Yeah.
And so like you were just thinking about the logic of the program.
Yeah.
And then, the 2000s, especially the late 2000s rolls around in the web. And then like to be a programmer, it's no longer about writing code. It's like you have to know frameworks. And there's nothing fundamental about frameworks.
Yeah.
Like for me to understand Next or React or, some weird CLI, there's nothing fundamental.
No.
So it really is just wasted knowledge. I'm like, like using space in my brain, to remember some dumb design decision from like some random person, right? And so for me, it's actually a little bit different, which is the nice thing about AI is like all the framework stuff it knows. So I don't have to waste my brain on it. And I can literally just think about the programming logic, which I think is actually what matters because you're actually articulating what the program can do. So it's kind of a similar thing to what you're saying, but I think maybe I'm even abstracting it more. Like I actually think, I think code's a very effective way to articulate trade-offs. And to articulate what you want something to do. It actually is, right? Like English is ambiguous, and so it's fine to write code. I would just think all the framework nonsense is the stuff that we shouldn't we should not worry about. And then of course, to your point, there are things where you don't have to describe so low level as code that you can do a high level.
And there's so many aspects that like we've both like been like hardcore like our brain has been changed by sitting with stuff like a Commodore 64 and like learning memory addresses and just taking for granted that like every little comment.
I remember pokes and P. I remember like totally, Apple, you like poke into like independent memory, like you're loading, like
it was like that level, right? Like. So we also forget how much of a barrier it is, like just when you start, right? Like that, like. That whole learning curve of like, oh, I mistyped one character and now nothing works, right? Like,
right.
And I think we underestimate like how big of a difference it makes when all of that is sort of no longer a barrier, right? Like where, hey, like even if you leave out like a character here and there, like the logic still holds, right? Like the logic is still sound, right? Like so suddenly you just need to start practicing that ability to reason with logic and to understand like the system. And it's really fascinating, I think, to see some of these people. Like, I see sort of two journeys, right? Like I see people like us that are starting to learn how to work with AI and coming from like the world we come from. And then I see these people that come from like the completely opposite apart and start learning to build software without that journey that we went through. And it's so interesting to see that interplay they have with the AI then, right? Like, because that becomes the sort of constant iteration one that's just like, why does this do this?
Yeah,
right?
and the
like,
learning, it becomes basically an educational tool. No, that's exactly right. It's like, it's like the AI not only does, but also teaches you how to do it. So you learn the fundamentals that way. No, I absolutely have seen the same thing. Can I move the conversation a little bit, which is, so we've kind of been working kind of out towards the user. We've talked about like, Netlify itself, using AI, and then how is a good target for AI. As you go towards the user, we're actually seeing the browser itself seem to evolve, right? And there's like new browsers, AI level browsers. Are you starting to see impact from that, or is that still kind of on the come?
It's a good question. I think it's still more on to come than like something that's like very real right now. You see it in like the access patterns, right? Like where you suddenly see like all of these sites being accessed by all kinds of different agents in all kinds of different ways that are different than human access patterns, right? Like, and that comes from browsers and from tools like Cloud Code and so on, right? Like we've like one thing that Bond.js just came up with, and everybody, like us included, are copying now, is this idea of like, for their documentation side, use content negotiation. So when Cloud Code asks for a page, instead of sending the HTML, respond directly with the markdown. So it uses less tokens to like interpret it, right? Like,
I see. Oh, that makes a lot of sense, right?
So we're starting to see those kind of patterns where we actually start like in practice building like content negotiation, where like, is this an agent accessing or is it a human accessing? And maybe we should do different things, right? Like, and I think those are sort of early signs of what will happen when even the browser starts being like that and starts like having AI inside, that sometimes it's the human viewing and sometimes it's the AI in the browser.
So based on this, is your mental model that most AI is working with a human, or is your mental model that these things become more divorced over time? Because the browser question, to me, assumes there's a human running the browser in tandem with an AI, where like the purely agentic one, maybe there isn't a human so tightly in the loop.
I think it's pretty obvious that that in the beginning of this journey, it was all sort of very human in the loop, right? Like, and I think there will always be a large set of human in the loop interactions, right? Like, and especially the browser, I think, will generally be very like experience oriented, right? Like, and I'm going somewhere and I'm experiencing something. So maybe you have this assistant that helps you with everything, but it's still like very in the loop. But it's also very obvious that especially these building blocks around actually like, strangely enough, like the code agents in the CLI, like Cloud Code, Codex, Gemini CLI, like those are sort of turning out to be really strong generalist agents, right? Like, because they live in that like CLI space where they can do anything you can do in a computer pretty easily, right? Like, and they can write code, so they can even write their own tools to do new things and so on. And they are kind of like really being able to do longer and longer stretches of just like uninterrupted work, where you give them some task and they just try to solve it, right? Like, so I think
I had one of these CLI tools where I'm like, I was just trying to be like, okay, I'm going to make it do a full game, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a test that'll test if the game works, and then I'm going to have it just keep iterating on it until like it passes the test. And it ran for a few hours, and it cost me $10,000. I will tell you, for those that are watching, be careful. I was like, whoops.
It's wild.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, just to your question, right? Like, I think we'll see both, right? Like, I do think that we are on this cusp of seeing more and more like truly autonomous agents. Hopefully, they're still always doing things because some human,
as opposed to like actually having true agency and the robotic takeover.
Yes. Hopefully, it's still like long task, but some human was like, "Hey, go do this thing."
Yeah. Do you think about like? I mean, you talked a bit about it in the content negotiation, but do you actually think about the economics and how they're shifting as a result of all of this stuff? Because it does feel like spend is very different in the world of agents. So it really is about tokens. It's less about compute network and storage.
Everybody is repricing, right? Like we've launched new pricing for the same reason, right? Like I think everybody is starting to build credit models in some form, right? Like,
it seems to me. So I remember the shift from perpetual to like recurring. Like I remember that, right? It feels like we're going from like a recurring to like a usage based based on this. And is your experience the same?
It's the same. I would say, I think all of us are also looking for ways to make it more outcome based rather than pure usage based, right? Like, and trying to find ways, because like often the usage of the agents, that's like a weird thing with usage based, right? Like that often you have very little control over what, like, is this question I ask the agent
a long one or a short one?
Right? Like, is it going to use a lot of tokens?
Is it going to be $100
right?
Like, or $20?
I don't really know, right? Like, it's going to be 10,000, right? Like, and is this game worth 10,000 or like $10, right? So I think a lot of us are also trying to figure out what like those elements of like value are.
That sounds very tough to me.
And it's really tough. So I think in reality, everybody's kind of like usage-based right now, right? Like, but I think at the same time, it's not impossible that over time, even if it's tough, we start getting better at figuring out elements that feel more aligned to value than just pure token usage, which feels pretty like one out of your control and not super aligned in the sense like if I could do the same thing for you in like 5 tokens, you would probably prefer it.
Of course.
It would probably pay me more to do it really fast in 5 tokens than to do it really slow with like 10 million tokens, right?
Are you using agents in operations now? Like
we are using some internally, but not enough, I would say. But we are using some. Like I think especially our developer organization have built custom agents for all kinds of stuff like linear integration and management there, things like keeping up with what's happening in Next.js so we can keep doing the right framework adapters and so on, right? We've built a lot of that kind of internal tooling.
Yeah, it's very, I mean, for me, I'm just very interested in like right now today, not science fiction, like where do agents apply, right? Clearly they're a great productivity tool. Clearly they can do longer running tasks. Clearly like there's like basic stuff that they're pretty good at. Like for example, if I'm like, I don't know, convert from this language to this language, like there's good at these kind of like, you know, well-scoped, well-defined tasks. Seem less good at like, you know, ongoing operations where you've got to be correct and, you know, like these are kind of these complex spaces and so forth. And so you know,
I think in the end, in a lot of those, like, I mean, obviously, the kind of agent we're like the highest adopters of is the coding agents ourselves as well, right? Where even like something like agent runners we built, like we're now building a lot of the product with those agents, right? Like, and
have you found that to actually increased feature velocity?
Yeah. We can see like like the when people get good at it, it starts really increasing the velocity with which you can build stuff. And also it increases the capacity of like a really strong engineer to both go do some really hard focused work, but just spin off a bunch of like the easy stuff along the way and get it done, right? Like, but what I was saying there is that I still think we are more in the line of using that to build programs that does stuff when it's like automations rather than having like agents automate stuff because it becomes like weirdly unpredictable, right? Like, and in the end, once you know what to automate, it's like simpler to just actually
automate it.
To actually automate it, right? Like,
I totally agree.
But I think the fact that like it's so much cheaper to write automations changes that like you start building a lot of automations and potentially you start building a lot of apps and automations instead of like buying a lot of software.
So this is a bit of an aside, but it just reminded me of something. So Max Biilmann, the Airflow, superset guy. So hardcore open source developer, has a company called Preset, and he was telling me, he's like, the most amazing thing with these coding agents is, I've only worked on open source. Right now, I'm working on a large open source. This project's been around for a long time, so all the agents know it.
Yeah,
we're doing kind of front end JavaScript stuff, which they're all really good at. And so, so like I feel like, and then all of the engineers in the company are like pretty senior.
Yeah.
So it's like it's like we all woke up and we were like superheroes. It was like and so like you got these senior engineers. That are using these coding models like junior engineers on an open source code base. And, the velocity is 10x, right? So that makes a lot of sense. But I also compare it to, I work with companies where they're doing pretty new stuff and it's not front end and it's kind of still experimental and maybe they've got more junior developers or whatever. And I feel like the velocity hasn't increased at all. So I would assume like, at least in the case of Netlify, like you are doing a lot of JavaScript, a lot of front end, a lot of webs. I would think that it's probably pretty amenable to these models, or
but I will say that people that get good at them start using them for things across the stack, right? Like, and I see that, right?
But
like you can get them to where I go
more
really
more
well
senior developers or more
senior developers, right? Like I think
that
you need,
tracks,
I think especially when the deeper you go in the stack, the more you need to really be like kind of an architect, right? Like to get these kind of agents to do the right stuff, right? Like, and then the higher up you go in the stack, the more you can now be like just jump in and do it without like without any development background.
Yeah. It's kind of a fun time, right?
It's really fun.
Are you coding?
I'm like, so I kind of made it like around the same time I wrote the AX article.
Yeah.
Like a little before that, I kind of started making it my personal mission that like, I want to learn how to be a really good developer again. I would say I was a pretty strong developer, right? Like I built all of course.
Yeah, I know.
Like I built like the back end, the front end, everything, right? Like for the first version, like everything, like from the C++ to the CSS, right? Like everything. But I sort of started saying like, I want to make it my mission to become an equally good developer without writing any code myself.
Yeah.
And ideally without looking at code. That's still, like, you still need to do that, right? Like, but I kind of like started to make it my mission. And in the beginning, it was very frustrating. And now I think it's really fun.
Really?
And now I do a lot of pull requests. And I probably annoy the team a
lot. You're actually submitting PRs?
I'm doing like...
Wait, but you haven't looked at the code?
I mean, okay, when I do PRs to our actual code bases, I do go and look at the code because I've learned the hard way that otherwise the team does and they shout at me. So now I go and look at the code first and tell Cloud Code to fix it before I open the pull request right? Like, and a lot of that has, like, we launched this new agent runner product and a lot of that has like informed it because I wanted to make sure that you could actually do the whole like cycle of iteration before you open a pull request versus like the GitHub integrations where you ask code, like Cloud Code to do something and then you get a pull request you never knew like to actually did it do something useful, right? Like, but I do find like that once you start changing that whole mentality to just like work through the context engineering and the prompts and like the systems thinking and like guiding this model, it's pretty remarkable what you can get it to do. And there's definitely some cases where, so it's funny, there's some cases where I've built something where realistically, if I had the time to just sit time with a code editor in a like uninterrupted stretch and write the code, I would have written it faster and probably better. But as a CEO, I definitely don't have that time, right? Like, and in this case, I could still build it, but just by like spinning up these async run, checking on in between meetings, like where did it go, what did it do? Let me give it some feedback and do another iteration and so on, right? Like, so suddenly you can work in that way, and it's a lot of fun.
I mean, I was just, I kind of work on these home projects, and I was actually using like the cursor CLI, and I was at dinner. I was curious how I was doing. So I was like checking this down. So I'm literally like a VC at a dinner, like talking about deals. I'm checking how my coding agents are doing.
I've totally been like in the same situation. And it's funny. I've noticed like every founder CEO with a technical background I talk to now are doing pull requests again.
I know. It's awesome.
It's just really funny.
I literally think it's a framework issue. Like if coding was simpler like it used to be, like everybody would still be coding, but you just have to learn too many different things. And so it's really remarkable. Do you ascribe to that AI is going to kind of usher in the what's called the dead web theory, where it's like it's only going to be agents talking to websites, and it's no longer a UI issue. And
I get it. Like I get it, but like I really don't believe in it. Like, and I don't see it. I see the opposite happening now, right? Like in some, everything is happening at the same time, right? Like so, you have a lot of slop generated that like other agents consume, and you have like lots of LinkedIn that's just like ChatGPT and so on, right? And probably people are asking ChatGPT to summarize it from it and so on, right? Like obviously,
I think the cliche is like to sound fancy, I use AI to create something big, and then to read it, you use AI to summarize it.
But there's also just way more people having fun building crazy stuff, and there's a lot of that out there now. And there's people building like really cool like WebGL games and so on that they could like just never managed to build before. And like there's so much going on that I think that theory just there's so many of these theories I think that just underestimates like humans and like
human consumption capacity, human creative capacity. I will say I personally have visited more new websites in the last 6 months and probably the 5 years prior, just because there's so much more cool stuff. I've kind of reduced everything to like a handful of sites that I check every morning in the last 5 years. And now there's always something new. And it's like...
I think it's totally true. I mean, I also see it as just a general moment of like people building way more stuff than they did before, right? Like, and I still see, and way more people building, right? Like, and that's again, back to that idea of like, it becomes more accessible to be a developer. We open up, like for so long, we've taken for granted that like, again, if you're sort of really generous, go beyond JavaScript and so on, right? Like, let's say, what would you say is like 100 million professional developers in the world, maybe even less?
I mean, we always estimate 60 roughly. It's probably more than that. But
if you're really generous, you say like 100 million, right? Like out of like what, like 8 billion people or something like that, right? Like that's like a really, really small part of humankind. And every other human can only use software that those developer builds for them, right? Like, and that's like such a constraint on that part, right? Like, and to me, when that constraint goes away, we're just going to have a lot, like unimaginable amount of more software, right? Like, maybe some of it will be bad, but there'll also be a lot more good stuff.
The future is going to be weirder, wilder, and more wonderful than we could imagine. This is an aside, but it's an adjacency, which is I really love that 3JS is having a moment.
Yeah, me too.
It's like, amazing.
It's amazing.
So for those listening, 3JS is a JavaScript library for 3D, and it's always just been kind of this... like why would you use the web for 3D? Like you didn't have like a, and now there's just full on like games being written, multiplayer games being written, really high quality graphics. Like, did you see that one recently? It was like
the small planet, the tiny planet,
the mail delivery. It was like
so
perfect.
Amazing, right? And just like,
and that probably wasn't even using AI, but like it is a time now that I do think that
precisely, and it'll get encoded into like the language models will train on it. They'll figure it out, and you'll start seeing people just like being able to just like spin something like that up. Right?
That's why I say, and you were there too, because we're old. But like, I mean, this does remind me of the early days of the web. It really does. Like, you just never know what to expect. There's this whole creative element, which has nothing to do with business. No B2B SaaS. It's like kind of random, kind of, and it's a cool time to be in the industry.
It's really cool, and I think. Like for me, it also reminds me just like in a small scale. And when I started Netlify and like,
when was that?
So I started working on it in like 2013, right? Like, and then we launched out of private beta in March 2015. And back then, a front-end developers was like, they were seen as like a pseudo developer, right? Like it was like someone that took a Photoshop file, sliced it up, and then handed it to a real developer that would implement it into something working, right? Like that was a front-end developer. And part of like the mission back then was like, hey, if we give them like the right tool chain, these front-end developers will go crazy and they will just build the whole thing, right? Like if we just separate all that backend stuff for them, and like that was like the Jamstack idea, right?
I remember your early pitch. I remember your early pitch where you were like, best for static sites. Maybe you'll see a little bit of dynamic. Seriously, you're like, you can use it for static websites, and then like now look at it now. It's
everything,
like,
right?
Everything, like everything is built using
everything
this.
is built using on it, right? Like and these front end developers are obviously the mainstream developers, right? Like there's like no question now, right? Like, and that's just like the same moment I think we are with this schism where like there's still this notion of like, oh, these vibe coders, they'll still need like a real developer to come and we will give them the tools and we will just see like this massive.
But I will say, like the hardcore developers also became full stack JavaScript developer. It wasn't everybody just kind of shifted over that.
Right?
Like,
and I think it'll be the same again, right?
I agree.
Everybody has to like take that next leap, but it will be a much, much bigger pool. And it'll probably also be a different shift where like today you're kind of like either a developer or not to some degree, right? Like of course there's mixtures. There's some VCs that develop software, right? Like in general, right? Like people that are like developers like hired with the title developer and that's what they do, right? Like, and I think that's the other shift that like, I think software development will just be a skill.
Yeah, I agree.
And there will still like, just like with writing, there's still professional writers, but like all of us also have to know how to write as part of our jobs.
Yeah,
right?
same
like,
thing with
development will become like that, right? Like you're like there'll be a level of it that you're just expected to be able to do in lots of different jobs, and then there'll still be some expert developers that are like only doing that, but it'll be the minority, I think.
Bring us a bit into the future. So where do you think this? So I mean, just actually to try and maybe catch up the conversation a little bit, which is or summarize the conversation is last time we talked about this was a little bit speculative. You've seen actually a dramatic increase in users. Clearly, we're seeing
like we've also seen like after that, so many companies start focusing on AX, right? Like, and as I said, especially the developer tool space, right? Like where I think everybody has just seen, okay, we have to go in this direction, right? Like Bessemer had the updated version of like the developer tool laws, and the first one was AX, right? Like it's like Resend as like an example, and there's so many like from Supabase to like Neon, like everybody is like super focused on like we gotta work with these agents, so we don't really matter, right? Like. But then also in spaces like the CTO of HubSpot, he's really like geared HubSpot towards like we need to just be really great for these agents to work with, right? Like, and that's going to be the interface to much of our data and automations and everything like that, right? Like, and you're starting to see, I think, now with like ChatGPT's shopping like integration, you'll start seeing everybody in the e-commerce space be like, okay, how do we really deal with this and so on, right? Like, so I think it's also become a really tangible industry.
Really tangible, changing the behavior and the CEO submitting PRs, like changing development, changing like the type of users going to the site, like all of these things. Like, do you have like a bit of a more science fiction-y kind of prognostication for where things go? Or do you think now it's, can you clearly see the next few years from here?
I think everybody, like, I don't think anybody can right now, right? Like, I think we're definitely in this like wild space where like what's clear is that that everything is changing so fast. I have paths like I believe in, right? Like that trends I believe in and things I think will definitely happen, right? Like, and as I said, like, I think, I do think we are going to this like world where software is much more of a thing that's not built by like this small, relatively speaking, really small part of humanity for all the rest of humanity, and where software is something much more malleable and that everybody can like sort of like do stuff on. And I think that also means that like code as we know it today is going to be much more of a niche thing that's not really very involved in like the daily process of software, which will change the infrastructure around software building a lot, right? Like because everything is so code centric right now, like things like GitHub and pull requests and so on, right? Like all of that I think is going to evolve to like a level of abstraction where it's much more about understanding like the outcome of what the agents do and the iteration with those agents and like introspecting and so on. I think browsers will evolve really dramatically from this, and we'll have much more of like that originally concept of a user agent on the web is getting real, right? Like we're going to have like all of these different ways of consuming the web, where some looks somewhat like the browser now and some really doesn't. A lot of things that's held us, like that's made it really challenging to build like very visual or UI driven experience and so on, are going to be solved. Like, for example, all of the accessibility constraints, right? Like they're going to not really matter, because like what would you prefer, like trying to access my e-commerce through a screen reader or just through ChatGPT in voice mode, right? Like
listen, I think about this all the time, which it feels like the consumption layer is changing, right? Totally. So like my son loves to chat with AI friends.
Yeah.
And when my son's 15, when my son becomes 18, to get a bank account, like, is he going to go to some shitty SaaS bank website, or is it going to come through this?
Yeah.
Which also kind of begs the question is like, you know, like the web was never super conversational based. It was more UI based. And so does that shift? Is the consumption layer going to include AI going forward? Like,
I think the consumption layer is definitely going to include AI, and a lot of things are going to happen inside like agents that people even have I think people will also, that's another reason I think AX is important versus like the company that think they will build, like you'll go to their website and they will build
but it's probably the consumption layer is going to become AI, and then the AI consumes the traditional web.
Precisely, because I don't think you, like I think you will. Like already now you see people like have history with their ChatGPT or Claude, and they really have a preference, right? Like, and they don't want to go to like the bank's AI and talk to that, right? Like they just want to interact in that way. So I think a lot of that will be really driven by like the agents you interact with. And then I think at the same time, I think the application layer is going to be a whole new part of the web, right? Where a lot of interaction and like seeing what's happening, and like that whole concept of being able to build something and put it on a URL and everybody can use it and interact with it and can be like collaborative and so on. Like I think that's still such a strong underpinning of the web, that now that everybody can build more of it, like we also just at the same time, like we're going to see less of like the traditional bank website, but we're going to see much more like interesting stuff.
I think it's so remarkable, the affinity between users and their, to your point, like their AIs. Like, and it's not just memory. Like a lot of people are like, well, you have the chat history of memory. It's not that. Like, did you see like the outcry and the move from GPT-4 to 5? They're like, 4 was so much better. Then it turns out that just meant it was more friendly. It's because like, you just got used to this. And so I think it's pretty clear that there's going to be a pretty serious attachment to it, and they're going to want to like actually filter the web through that. So, you know, something that occurs to me is that there's two kinds of approach here. So some of the tools that I use, it's like they kind of do the work for me, which maybe as an old developer, I don't quite like, because I like to have the creativity. I like to be very involved. And one thing that I've actually really appreciated, I mean, philosophically about kind of what Netlify is doing, and I'll just love your thoughts about this, is like, I get to use whatever tools I want, and like, I get to be the developer. And like, how do you view this as it plays out? Like, is this actually a philosophical distinction that's real, or am I making that up?
No, I think it's real. And I think there's two really different mindsets on it, right? Like there is that mindset of like building tools that claim to be like, we are now your developer. And like, you don't need developers anymore because like the AI is your developer.
It's like you outsource development,
right? Like, and you outsource it. Now, our approach has really been like, you are now a developer. Right? Like whether it's to our existing developer base or whether it's to all of these new people that come in and start this journey, right? Like it's really like, okay, if you want to go on this journey, you're now a developer and you have to learn things and you have to understand like what happened, like how software is built, right? Like code is like a little part of it, right? Like, but if you want to like talk to a database, you have to know just like some element of like what's happening in the world, and you have to know that to be able to collaborate with these AI agents, and it's not like you're not going to get success if your expectation is that you just go prompt them, build me XYZ app, and they will do perfect, right? Like you're going to be successful if you're willing to learn how to develop software in a world where these agents are able to multiply your abilities to write code, to do all kinds of stuff, but still have to take the direction from someone, right? Like, and I think that's what sort of underpins our whole approach to this and our whole philosophy, this idea that we are like helping billions of people become developers and take part in this practice of building software, and not that it's like everybody's just a consumer now, right?
This is an aside. But I wonder if you have the same experience that I do, which is I find that like using AI as someone who's been developing for a long time is like an exercise in abdicating opinion. Because these models do dazzling things, but it's not always the dazzling thing that I would expect it to be, right? It's almost like I've got to let go of expectations, because I can articulate, I want this, and it'll do that, but I would have done it quite differently. And so, do you have the same experience of like, you kind of have to like let go? And then B, do you think this is just something because we've been developing and like that will just not be an issue as a new set of developers shows up?
I mean, maybe that's why all founder CEOs is now programming with agents, because it's like we've already gone through that in a way. Like you started hiring these developers and you ask them like, do this thing, and they come back with a thing that's like pretty cool, but it's like, I would have done like, why did you do it that way? Right? Like,
I love that. So you're almost like reclaiming power. That's so funny.
You've kind of already gotten used to that, right? Like, so now you can just do it in a closed loop with an agent that don't actually get angry at you, and you're like, no, change it to my way, right? So, but
I love that. Cool.
There's definitely something to it, right? Like that you have to work at that level of like, it's not exact, right? But you have to be really good at articulating what is it that matters, right? Like, and what is it you actually care about, and what is it that the agent can just make up, because like that's fine. They're like, as long as it works, right? Like, and totally. it feels very different than like. It's a very different feel than the traditional sort of part of really like centering yourself, like figuring out exactly in your head, like how should this software be put together and so on. And you need to sort of like out of that step have like just a really clear idea of like what is the flow that really matters, what is like the part of this software I really care about, and then what is the part that like fill in the blanks.
So one of the consistent things in this conversation we've had is the system should not be the developer for you, like the user, system builders should be the developers, but now that's not just the subset of professional developers, it can be anyone. So maybe let's just end on this. For those that are listening to this who are not professional developers that want to enter this, like what would you recommend to them as far as like where places to start, like how to get going, maybe things to read?
I mean, so ironically, I think it's harder for me to guide that journey than someone from that space, right? Like, but people I see going on that journey, right? Like I see them start with like tools like Bolt or Rebel-It or whatever. And then I see them jump very quickly from like...
Bolt, did you say Bolt?
Bolt.new, right? Like, we have like, for example, like we just had like a
Bolt's
launch.
Great, by the way. I love Bolt.
I love it, right? And we just really had this launch event where one of our challenges, like silly challenge, right? Like, but we wanted an event and all of our team was building the product. So it was like, who's going to build the event site So I told the team that this guy that's like a customer success manager, that's his background. And like you go in his LinkedIn, right? Like no sort of technical background or anything, but he had been like super active in the Bolt community and he's just become really good at prompting Bolt, right? Like, and he was tweeting at me with like a redesign of Netlify he made in Bolt, and it was like really cool.
Wow.
So I said, like, let's just ask him to make the event page.
No.
And he just prompted the event page entirely in Bolt.
That's so cool.
And the event is over now, but the page is probably still at netlify.com/deploy, right? Like, and I think it's like a really like, I think it's like, it was a very high performing event page for us. It's like one of the highest performing event pages we've had in the last 4 years, right? Like, And he has just like, he has really learned a skill set, right? Like it's not, I could not go, I'll admit, I can't go prompt bolt to make that event page. Like, but he's really built that skill set, and he's just built it by being like really curious and then looking at all the things he likes, right? Like here's like a site I think is really cool. It has that pattern. I'm going to tell Bolt, like, look at this site and replicate this pattern and then combine it with this other pattern, right? Like, and I think a lot of the people that starts with that kind of sort of remixing, right? Like, and just like, how can I just like remix something? And then the people, like, then some of them start just going deeper, right? Like they start using Cloud Code and Cursor and play around, and they go directly to Netlify, and they start like learning how more of the software work, and they interrogate the models constantly. Not like, they don't just take the outcome for granted, right? Like they keep interrogating, like, why did you do that? And like, how did you build that? And try to actually like use curiosity to understand. And those people are really learning fast.
I do think this is a really important point to make that everybody should know is, so, I work with many of these AI companies, and they have, whether it's in a creative domain or a code domain or a technical domain, they have users that don't come from those domains. And they still have to work hard, right? So it's not like labor is being removed. Like it's still the best people work the hardest at it.
They work the hard.
The best people still spend the most amount of time, right? It's just like the product is different in this time. And so for those of you that are interested, I do think, and to use these AI tools, just realize that, like it is magic in that it gives you a result, but it is not magic in that you still have to put in the time and the effort to learn it. But they're great learning tools to produce great outputs. And so
it's funny because like in the past, before all of this AI, when people asked what to do to be a good developer, I said, like, just have a really high tolerance for frustration.
That's about right.
Because like you're just constantly going to do things in the beginning that it doesn't work and it breaks and so on, right? Like, and I think it's
I'm not sure it's any different.
Precisely, that's my point, right? Like I think it's kind of the same, right? Like it's like that part of it's probably still the same. You're still going to be just like, okay, it didn't work, but I'm going to try again, right? Like, and it broke, and I'm going to try again, and like I'm going to figure out how it works, and you got to just have that kind of like tenacity of like, just keep going.
Amazing. On that note, I think this is a great place to end. And thank you so much for showing up. That was a lot of fun.
That was really fun. Thank you.